What's going on, everyone? It's Nina Infinity. Welcome back to my channel. And today we're going to be discussing Shad's terrible viral take about Studio Ghibli and about it being plain and uninspired. This tweet rightly got ratioed to hell, and thank God for that, because it truly was a horrible take. Now, I do think that Shad was trying to trigger some folks because he is known to be an AI sim. And honestly, my argument with him isn't even really about AI or that it can be used as a tool. I have my own opinions on it that echo a lot of other people who are not fans of AI art, namely the fact that they are an echo of actual artists and they feel empty and hollow and generic and, dare I say, uninspired. But what I really do have a problem with is when someone like Shad, who has very little artistic skill and admittedly uses AI to enhance his own mediocre art, decides to chime in on one of the masters of his craft, Hayao Miyazaki, and call him uninspired. Shad also decided to double down on his terrible take on a panel with comic book artist Mike S. Miller, who at least, thank God, pushed back a bit on some of the really ignorant things Shad was saying. So I wanted to go over some of the video and unpack some of Shad's arguments and present my own.
Looking at the character design specifically, if you break it down to the characters, because
Dad, don't go there. Don't go there. Miyazaki is one of the greatest animators.
Animators, I agree. This is like
literally.
I think it's kind of hilarious that Mike is already like, please don't go there, because he realizes how ridiculous Shad's take is. And I think he just kind of doesn't want to be lumped in with what he thinks, which makes sense because no self-respecting artist would want to be lumped in with that. I've watched this video, so I know that Shad goes on to defend his point of view about the style, though giving Miyazaki credit as an animator, but not as an artist, which makes me just go, oh, gee, thanks, Shad. It's really good to know that that you think that one of the best animators of all time is at least good at animating things. But let's continue.
Literally an animation versus a still frame.
But see, I'm not like, I even said the animation is quality. The animation is great. I'm talking about the art style. Flat. Looking at the character design specifically. But it was so funny because people get so triggered, they missed the very clear argument I made. And it was very clear. It's like the base art style itself, I think, is plain and uninspired.
No, Shad. I actually did understand you quite clearly. And the fact is that you have a very subjective opinion about Miyazaki's art style. You call it plain and uninspired, as if you don't know what the words mean. So let's look at the definition of the word uninspired. Uninspired, lacking in imagination or originality. Lacking imagination or originality. All right, let's unpack that for a moment. Shad is alleging that Miyazaki's art style lacks imagination or originality. So we'll have to do a little history lesson on Miyazaki's art. Miyazaki's art, like many artists, has evolved through time. Miyazaki is one of the oldest living animators. He began his professional animation career at Toei Animation 57 years ago in 1963 as an in-between artist working on films like Gulliver's Travels Beyond the Moon and Wolf Boy Ken. But he found in-between animation work unsatisfying and later went on to work with another renowned animator, Isao Takahata. Throughout the 60s, he's worked on many different projects in different positions. But his first animation directorial credit was on an animated movie called The Great Adventures of Horace, the Prince of the Sun, which was the directorial debut of Isao Takahata, who Miyazaki considered his mentor. And Miyazaki was the animation director and scene design key animation director. That project sparked Takahata and Miyazaki's partnership spanning 50 years years across numerous animation studios. I'm not going to go into Miyazaki's entire portfolio because this video will become 2 hours long, but needless to say, the man worked in animation through multiple animation studios, ups and downs, and many challenges. Miyazaki took over directing duties for Lupin III Part 1 midway through its production, directing 17 of the 23 episodes alongside Isao Takahata. Miyazaki and Takahata moved from April to Zuyo Izo, where they worked on World Masterpiece Theater, which featured their animation series Heidi, the Girl of the Alps, an adaptation of Joanna Spyri's Heidi. In 1975, Zuyo Izo split into 2 companies, and Miyazaki and Takahata's branch became Nippon Animation. They briefly worked on Dog of Flanders in 1975 before moving to the larger-scale 3000 Leagues in Search of Mother in 1976, directed by Takahata, which are both amazing series. And this is when I first became familiar with Miyazaki's work, because even in Iran during the late 80s and early 90s, they played World Masterpiece Theater, which consists of many wholesome cartoons based on novels. In 1977, Miyazaki was chosen to direct his first animated television series, Future Boy Conan. He directed 24 of the 26 episodes, and it's an absolutely amazing series. And I think this is where you start to really see the iconic Miyazaki style start to take shape. Through the 1970s, he continued working for Nippon Animation with Takahata, and they created many more amazing cartoons for World Masterpiece Theater. Miyazaki finally left Nippon in 1979 and went on to create The Castle of Cagliostro, who most people recognize as Miyazaki's first work, even though that's not really accurate, as I've just explained. Miyazaki created Nausicaa of the Valley of the Wind in 1984 based on his own manga. The film was produced by Topcraft, a studio that later became the foundation for Studio Ghibli, which was officially founded by himself, Takahata, and Toshio Zuski in 1985. In 1986, they came out with their first feature film and one of my favorite Ghibli movies, Laputa, the Castle in the Sky. They went on to My Neighbor Totoro in 1988 and Kiki's Delivery Service in 1989, and with each film, Miyazaki's style took shape more and finally became undeniably recognizable with Totoro, who eventually became the logo for the company. I want to note that Isao Takahata made several of his own feature films for Ghibli, which are often mistaken for Miyazaki's works, but they're not. They are Grave of the Fireflies in 1988, Only Yesterday in 1991, Pompoko 1994, My Neighbors the Yamatas 1999, and The Tale of Princess Kaguya in 2013. The fact that this happens, aside from the fact of them being Studio Ghibli creations, is that the styles of animations are so similar, and the reason for that, I think, is because Takahata was actually Miyazaki's mentor, and therefore their styles are of course intertwined. But if you look closely, you can tell the differences of each artist depending on how deeply you know their works. As the years went on, Miyazaki created some of the most iconic, breathtaking animations that the world has ever seen, including Princess Mononoke in 1997 and Spirited Away, which won 58 awards, including the Academy Award for Best Animated Feature in 2003. As Miyazaki's works evolved, the more detailed it became. So Shad's argument that the art style is plain and uninspired is just untrue. And as I said at the start of this, based on his subjective opinion. Shad did go on to explain what he does consider to be inspired art. Let's have a listen.
I think the Disney art style is more expressive, was more innovative, and inspired a lot more people and a lot more artistic kind of expressions beyond that. Okay, I actually think the Miyazaki.
Which Disney art style? Disney didn't just have one art style.
Well, it really became innovative with Sleeping Beauty, where they started to
Yeah, there's no
exaggerate certain
rotoscope.
proportion. So no. More rotoscope was done on Snow White. The first one where that started to get the classic Disney look was Sleeping Beauty, massively innovative, where you can look at some of the designs and they still hold up, and it was stylized, and that's what I would consider quite inspired. And then you get to the more classic Disney style, like Little Mermaid, specifically with how the eyes look and things. Yeah, I think that is way superior. And I'm talking about the art style, the actual look of the characters here. Okay. I think the Ghibli style has certain limitations and honestly looks plain. Like one of the things that Ghibli struggles with is, I think, a certain level of cuteness and expression. I think you could do the thing that makes Ghibli genuinely brilliant is how they animate. The animation is just fluid, flawless. How it's integrated with the backgrounds, and I've complimented Ghibli in this post, right? At no point did I ever say I hate Ghibli. I said the art style is plain and uninspired. And as to the art
I
style as
wouldn't
well,
say uninspired. You could
in
say it's
what way?
plain, but it's simple because it's animation.
So,
They need to crank these things out. But
well, that's not an excuse. I
wouldn't
think there
say
are animation
uninspired.
styles that are more detailed. Absolutely. Uninspired is a more subjective thing, but I'm entitled to my. I don't think it was particularly, innovative or groundbreaking. And that to me is that means it's uninspired in that sense. But at no point did I ever say I dislike it. I think it's plain. I think it's adequate, but nothing special.
Oh boy. Adequate and nothing special. Okay. All right. Oh boy. Okay. Yeesh. I mean, the guy's like, it's not like I don't like Ghibli or anything, but I just think it's plain and uninspired. To tell us how you really feel, Shad. Jeez. The argument that Shad's making here, the Disney animation style is superior to Ghibli, is subjective. And he even recognized that. He said, my opinion is subjective. Yes, it's subjective. It's like saying spicy food is superior to sweet food, or it's like saying that one flower smell is better than another flower smell. Art style is a subjective thing. Walt Disney's art style was also inspired. I don't disagree with Shad, but it certainly wasn't more detailed versus Miyazaki. It was just different. Both have inspired countless of artists and animators with their styles. And it's why Shad finds so many modern animes looking like Studio Ghibli, because Miyazaki and Takahata inspired generations of animators across the globe, especially within Japan. When it comes to Ghibli art style, one thing can definitely be said, that Miyazaki spends way more time trying to express the world the characters are in rather than the characters themselves. Just look at this shot in Howl's Moving Castle of Howl's room. An artist painstakingly drew every single detail of this room. Sophie and Howl are not as detailed because that's the style of this animation. Miyazaki's approach is often tied to his philosophy of animation, where characters are drawn with minimalistic, fluid lines to emphasize emotion and movement, while backgrounds are rendered with meticulous detail to immerse the viewer in a living, breathing world. It's a visual storytelling tool as much as an aesthetic, reflecting his view of humanity's place in a vast, intricate universe. In animation circles, this contrast might be loosely described as figure-ground juxtaposition, a term borrowed from art and design, and that highlights the interplay between a simpler foreground, the characters, and a richly detailed background. I like to call it Miyazaki-esque layering. I believe his art style draws from traditional Japanese art like ukiyo-e, where flat, bold figures often sit against elaborate natural scenes. In an interview with Comic Box magazine in 1988, Miyazaki discusses his approach to animation and the influence of traditional aesthetics, saying, quote, "I think that Japanese sensibility has always been about finding beauty in transience. The cherry blossoms fall, and that's why they're beautiful. I want to make films that have that feeling, where you see something and it's gone, but it stays with you. That's what I aim for in every frame." And in a 2005 interview with The New Yorker, he said, "I've always loved the old picture scrolls. The way they show a world that's alive with spirits and movement. That's what I try to do. Make a world you can step into." So Shad's notion that Disney art style, or any art style, being superior because the characters are more detailed, is amateur and lacks perspective. As far as Shad's views on AI go, I don't really want to dive too deep into that in this video, but I'll say this, that I have fundamentally different views on it, and I believe that AI is a tool, but not a perfect one. There are a lot of ethical and philosophical concerns about its use, and the growing dependence on it is something that I personally find very troubling. But Miyazaki, who has a really deep connection with animation, had this to say about AI.
人工知能を使うと多分人間が想像できない気持ち悪い動きができるんじゃないか。一応こんなことをやっています。実際には
毎朝この頃会わないけど身体障害の友人がいるんですよ。そのハイタッチするんだけど大変なんです。彼の筋肉がこわばってる手と僕の手でこうハイタッチするで、その彼のことを思い出してね、僕はこれ面白いと思って見ることできないですよ。これを作る人たちは痛みとかそういうものについてね、何も考えないでやってるでしょ。極めて不愉快ですよね。そんなに気持ち悪いものをやりたいなら勝手にやってればいいだけで、僕はこれを自分たちの仕事をつなげたいとは全然思いません。極めて何か生命に対する侮辱を感じます。
これでもほとんど実験なので、
それは分かってます。
その世の中に見せてどうこうってそういうものじゃないんです。
それは本当によく分かってるつもりですけど、どこへたどり着きたいですか。
まあ人間が描くのと同じように絵を描く機械
を作りたいんだ。
はい。
地球最後の日が近いって感じですね。それは人間の方が自信がなくなってくるからです。
Miyazaki is such an old school guy and has such a connection to his craft that he even had a hard time accepting CGI over pen and paper. Although Miyazaki has historically preferred hand-drawn animation, Studio Ghibli began incorporating limited CGI as early as Princess Mononoke in 1997 for visual effects and later expanded its use in films like Spirited Away and The Wind Rises. In an interview with The Guardian, he said, "Hand-drawn on paper is the best way to make animation because the roughness, the imperfections of the line give it a soul. Computers make things too perfect, and that perfection lacks life." Miyazaki's commitment to hand-drawn animation is evident in how Studio Ghibli artists painstakingly craft every frame. For instance, in Spirited Away, the food eating scene was animated with meticulous reference to real-life footage of people eating, ensuring natural and immersive movement. Similarly, in Princess Mononoke, individual arrows were animated frame by frame to capture the weight and force of each shot. Miyazaki's motto that he taught his animators is to draw people, not characters. And although he thinks that the animator's true tool is the pencil, he realizes his own limitation that comes with age and the passage of time. In recent years, he's been more open to allowing CGI artists to explore their potential in Ghibli. But I don't think he will ever allow it to become a full 3D studio, not as long as he's alive anyway. But who knows what the future will hold for Studio Ghibli, but I do hope that his son Goro carries on the spirit of his father's work, even if he does incorporate more CGI in it, as he has been known to do. At the end of the day, calling Miyazaki's art uninspired is like calling the ocean not deep enough. His work has shaped generations of animators, crafted breathtaking worlds, and touched the hearts of millions across the globe. His philosophy, his meticulous attention to detail, and his storytelling have set a standard that very few can match. The fact that so many modern artists outside of Japan continue to be influenced by his work proves just how inspired and impactful his art truly is. So what do you think? Does Miyazaki's work lack imagination? Is it uninspired? Or is Shad's take one of the worst takes that you have ever heard? Let me know in the comments. And if you enjoyed this video, be sure to hit the like, share the video, and subscribe if you're new here. Thanks for watching and have a great day. Bye!